Can I ask all of our speakers to come and join us here, including Nick Sirota? And if we could have one of our staff just bring one of these chairs to the front. So please all come up to the front for a Q&A. We're running a little bit late, but if you'll bear with me, we're going to try and finish up by 1:10, and there's a lot for us to talk about. I'll just begin acknowledging that we still have all of our friends and colleagues online watching this live, so I'm just going to go to the first Slido question, and then we'll throw to the floor. So the question is, all knowledge results from creative process. Considering that creativity is a core human ability, how can we enhance autonomy and stop teaching packaged knowledge? I think a lot of our speakers in this last panel have been talking about how you don't want to package knowledge, you don't want to have a packaged tool, you want something which is quite different to that. So how can we enhance autonomy and stop teaching packaged knowledge? Who's game enough? Microphones seem to be a bit low. Try it again. Try number one.
Sorry, that works now. Sorry, I just need to be turned on. Yeah, we're performing arts guy here. Sorry.
Turn on the mic.
So I think packaged knowledge is interesting. I think one of the ways to address it, because technical skills do need to be taught. We do need to learn technical skills. The internet is not the only answer. You can't just have Google answering everything for you. But to do it well, and for it not just to be a packaged kind of sort of good which is or service which is delivered, there need to be emergent learning environments. So the way that learning needs to be thought about is something where teachers need to be confident that an answer will arise, or a creative solution or a creative way of teaching that moment will arise through a process that is about creativity, which is driven by a creative mindset. And if teachers can go into that space rather than going, I need to teach this, and mapping backwards from that and developing a curriculum to answer that, but go, actually, I'm going to have a line of inquiry to unpack this, and they work in partnership across faculty, then I think those kinds of issues can be addressed.
Yeah, and I think all of you have really addressed this whole idea of being in partnership with communities, with the people who come into your galleries or to the place. Deborah, do you want to talk a little bit about how you manage that down in Bundanon? There were some great examples we saw there.
Yeah, I think maybe we're quite lucky in that we're actually able to have a dialogue with schools. Some schools come through to us quite quickly, so the relationship is a shorter one, but where there are regional schools where we can talk over time about the kind of things they're trying to address, a bit like the example with East Nowra Primary School. We were really able to see that we could step in and add value to what they were trying to do, and they were prepared to trust us and go on a bit of a journey. They didn't really know the song company and so on. So we were able to build that over time. So that is about building relationships with the schools and building trust and allowing for them to be able to have a slightly more open-ended outcome, which is probably sometimes much more possible with primary school. I fear beating up on teachers in secondary schools or on the schools themselves. I think they're under such enormous pressure. It absolutely shocks me that actually in secondary school they often need to finish a lesson with a finished product, that somehow there is a cycle where they have to get a product.
That you have a product at the end. And Tony, working in community schools, how's that been? Because it seems like it's absolutely not about product but process.
Well, there's nothing there. That's the reality and how hard life is. That Warrakoona is a place where people still have to hunt for food. What is happening within the school, and it's a transient nature. People are there, often teachers, unfortunately, because it's part of their due diligence to work within a community rather than want to be there. There's definitely cases that I've been in with communities where there is a white side of the community and a black side, and that there's no integration outside of the reason you're there. But I think remotely it's part of the invisibility of these people within our country.
Yeah, absolutely. And Nick, I mean, at the Art Gallery of South Australia, I mean, you worked in similar ways trying to bring different communities in.
I think the key is to try to create memorable experiences that people connect with. And you don't know what they look like, but you know what they feel like. So you have to have a framework that you work within, but be agile enough to change gears. And you have to make sure that the people that you're working with and have a framework and can be agile and can respond to the audience or the participants, because it's that responsiveness that actually does create the memorable experience. And it's actually having that dialogue and taking a step back and working out what the next thing should be to make sure there's these real and tangible connections. And I think when you work with artists, they are they have this great skill in making sure that that the ideas are real and very present, and they feel it. And so I think you just try to create a safe zone for those things to happen.
Yep, yeah, fantastic. Nick, I think you wanted to speak as well. And I've got a question that I'm going to throw to you as well. So make your comment and then I'll answer throw the question from Slido.
I think my comment really was an observation, which is that in both the last two sessions, one of the threads that has been running through is the engagement of young people's minds through watching practitioners and being engaged with practitioners. And that's also true of teachers. I mean, Frank was talking about inspiring teachers as well and training teachers, and the fact that artists are engaged within schools is really and within galleries. It's one of the great things that galleries and theatres. I was talking to the head of the school in the southwest of England, which is sort of 300 miles from the base of the Royal Shakespeare Company. The Royal Shakespeare Company had visited the school, and he said it had transformed the school, not just within the drama department, not just within the English department, but for young people to understand that you can be a practitioner. There is a craft, there is something to learn, there's something to admire,
Yes.
and there's something to build confidence.
Yes.
Was very inspiring.
So understanding that, how can arts councils, doesn't matter whether they're here in the UK or anywhere, what can art councils do to support major cultural organisations, like many of the ones that are represented in this panel, to encourage more art in schools? So how do we get this connectivity happening, and what's the relationship, or what role could an arts council have in helping to provide a framework?
They can't be a substitute. It needs to be within the education system. They can't, as I was suggesting earlier, you can't have that part of the education curriculum outsourced to all the arts organisations. So they can't be a substitute. But they can be an adjunct, they can be a support, they can be, as I was suggesting, an inspiration. And I think in the case of, in England at least, we've been trying to get the arts organisations in a given place, in a town or a city, to work together to offer an opportunity to schools. We call them cultural education partnerships.
Yes.
They're fairly embryonic, but they're beginning to actually make a difference, so that teachers can go and use those partnerships as the base for making contact into the art community.
Yes. So people on Slido have voted up a question which is really around this relationship between experts in the different kinds of institutions. So the question is, when will institutions understand that visual arts teachers are actually experts in their field? We do everything that you showcase every day. So a bit of a challenge there. So
Can I just take that on
Go,
board?
Nick.
I think that the best partnerships are the ones that have mutual respect and that are generous. Most of the programs I've led over the last 20 years have been free and are generous and reach out, and I think that's really important. All the art teachers that I've welcomed into my institution, we know that they're experts, and we bring them in because we want to support learning initiatives in the wider community. It's our mandate as an institution to help everyone reach out and see how artists view the world. It doesn't matter if you're a classroom teacher or you're a university academic or you're a curator. We all have the same goals at our heart, and those goals are to connect people with art. How we go about it differs, and it's the differences sometimes that might cause us to feel that we're not on the same page. But because we view art from a different facet, we're going to bring something different to the table. And I think it's important that we're generous about what we bring to the table.
Yeah, fantastic. I just want to remind everyone in the audience that there are 2 microphones here. I haven't been seeing any hands, but I'm just going to pause for a moment. You may actually be on Slido, so that might have been your question. So any questions from the audience before we go to the next question, which is about the creative process. So all knowledge, oh no, we've already done that one. That has been voted down, voted up. Okay, art museums are taking an active role within authentic creative learning. How can this be better recognised within the traditional education system? It's kind of taking the question back the other way. So authentic creative learning, how can that be better recognised within the traditional education system?
Can I just say, I think it probably is recognised. The biggest issue is actually how you fund those bridges and relationships. I mean, I've not met a teacher or a school or whatever that doesn't actually want to expose their kids to the Royal Shakespeare Company or to the Australian Ballet or to any of the artists or to Tony Albert or anyone. It's who actually pays for that company or that artist to have that opportunity for us to build that bridge as cultural institutions and educational institutions together. And that is the problem. A lot of the work we do, if it wasn't for our donors, we couldn't do it, but certainly also Create New South Wales and the Australia Council, they fund a lot of it. The Department of Education has closed doors. They say, oh, great, you're doing that, but it's not us to pay for it. They don't really see it as intrinsic, as an amazing foundational opportunity to support what they're trying to achieve in other areas of education.
Yep. Nick?
Well, I think that one of the purposes of Durham is to try and persuade the Department of Education in the UK and in England that actually they should take some responsibility for that. They do take a responsibility in terms of music, because they put fairly substantial sums into what they call music education hubs, which is all about doing something that politicians and ministers recognise, which is learning a skill, which can be assessed. And actually the question that we've not really touched on, that was the challenge that was put out by Mark, I think it was earlier today, was how do we create measures that will allow us to assess not necessarily skill or quality, but actually improvement. Because actually that's what education is about, isn't it?
Yes,
it's one of the things that education
that's
is
right,
about.
and often it's not necessarily about that, the kind of technical mastery that you might associate with, playing a musical instrument. Perhaps there are other forms of mastery that come through tacit learning, which may not be the best model, although that's one model. Nick, you wanted to respond as well.
I also wanted to say that it's also about confidence. Sometimes schools don't necessarily think that a big institution can respond to just basic curriculum outcomes. And one of the things that I found is that our programs that we had at the Art Gallery of South Australia were feeders for schools. So our Sunday 2 to 10-year-old program called Start, or our teenager program from 12 to 17, which happened outside of weekday hours, it was Saturday nights or Sundays, they themselves gave confidence to parents and to teachers that were part of those, that encouraged school visits, that those very basic programs gave them the great confidence that the institution could meet their needs. So you just have to make sure that there's enough gateways. And sometimes those gateways aren't formal, communication with teachers. Sometimes they're not teacher training sessions. Sometimes they're just weekend activities where a parent or a teacher or someone that's connected to the school is involved with, and it instills them with confidence and motivation that they get themselves through the door.
I think it was fascinating to watch the director of the Art Gallery of South Australia having to disguise himself as a pirate Albeit a very generous pirate, because if he'd appeared as a director, the parents would have melted away.
Yep. So we've got a few questions. I think Agatha actually wants to ask a question, and there's another more challenging question on Slido, which I'm going to maybe even close on.
I don't know if mine's challenging. I've just been thinking about my experience of being an artist and being educated by very good art teachers. And I was thinking about how many artists work in art education and how we need to find ways to allow those artists to express their intrinsic qualities as art teachers, and so support them in linking their art practices with art education, because I think often people are reduced to the role they're playing, and I think we need to open that space up much more. And also as artists, we talk a lot about artists being, artist-led projects, and I think artists also need a lot of support when they're leading education. I think education is very specific, and to be working with communities, I think that is something we always need to be conscientious when we approach how this is not a question, it's a comment. Yeah, but I was just thinking about that as I was doing that. Thank you.
Thank you, Agatha. Does anyone on the panel want to respond to that or make a follow-up comment?
Well, I think Howard was making that point, wasn't he?
Yes.
In terms of talking about being a practicing artist. It was always very amusing to me sometimes at the Tate when we would acquire a work by an artist and suddenly someone realized that that artist was one of the artists who was an artist educator within the institution. They expressed great surprise.
I know, well, we're also going to get a job as an artist. So often that's one of the things that happens, isn't it? So at the risk of ending on a controversial question, I can't not ask this. So we've just heard from the panel before from education specialists who said that arts education has to get past just being about fun. So we're keen to know whether the panel feel that their institutions and the work that you've just presented, including people in pirates' hats, is getting beyond that.
Because I was in the pirate hat, can I? I think, I think you can't apply judgments to the doorways that you create. Because if someone comes in and they start doing and thinking and feeling, I don't want to undermine its value. If I have to dress up as a pirate and commit and undertake a tour with pirate dialogue, and I convert 150 kids to start thinking about how artists see the world, I'm going to take that on the chin. And so I think there needs to be a suite of ways that you actually open the door for involvement, and you can't undermine the vehicle of fun, but the vehicle of fun is merely the vehicle. It's not the destination. The destination is actually connecting people with art. And so I always lay myself bare and think, I'll do anything to get someone to walk through the door to connect with an artwork, because that's serious business.
Look forward to seeing you.
Fantastic. We are going to run out of time, and I know that we're keen to have... There's one last question in the room which we're going to throw to, and then I'll let the panel have the last say. So, over here.
Thank you. My name's Catherine Kiriakou, and my question's for Tony Albert, because I'm a huge fan. I'm at Dulwich High School of Visual Arts and Design, and I would like to end by asking you, is there a teacher or a mentor who inspired your practice when you were younger? What impact did education have on you?
Wow, I feel incredibly lucky. I went to a high school with a great art teacher who looked at my practice as something beyond what she was able to teach. I spent 4 days a week at a regular school and 1 day a week at an art college through high school. So, again, that idea of teachers looking a bit, is such an undervalued, profession, but the education system treated me so well, I think, and the power of art within that periphery. It was at the same time I discovered works of people like Tracy Moffat and Gordon Bennett, and the huge profound those kind of artists had an effect on me that art wasn't about a pretty picture. It could say something, it could reach you, it could touch you. And I think without art, my life would be very, very different than it is now.
Thanks very much, Tony. Well, I know we're really just starting to hot up with all the questions, but we are out of time. Can I ask you all to join with me in thanking our panel for today?